Hello everyone and Assalamu alaikum. This is Introduction to Psychology Part 1 PSY 312 by Dear Knowledge. Okay, in our last videos we have successfully completed the lesson 2 in which we discussed about the visual system in great detail. So if you haven't watched that video, you can either check the description box or you can ask me in the comment section and I will provide the links of those videos, or you can check in the video section of our YouTube channel. So in this video, we'll start with the lesson 3, which will be all about the audition, the structure and function of the ear. So lesson 3 is basically the last lesson of chapter 4, and after that we will move towards lesson 5. Chapter 5. So lesson 3 is the last lesson of chapter 4, and then we will move to chapter 5, which will be the new chapter. So in this video, we will discuss the structure and function of the ear, in which we'll discuss hearing, in which we'll discuss the sensing sound waves. We will discuss some important terms: the audition, sound waves, hertz, loudness, amplitude, decibel, pitch, frequency, timbre, and these are some terms which we'll be using whenever we discuss the structure and function of the ear. So just like we started our discussion with the properties of light in psychological perspective before moving towards the main lecture, that was the visual system, the structure and function of the eye. So before that we discussed the nature and properties of light, and after that we discussed the structure and function of ear. So same in this video, we'll start with the nature of sound and we'll discuss all these general terms. And after that, in our next part, we'll discuss the ear and we'll discuss that how does it work. And in that video, we'll go with great detail on structure and function of the ear. So this video is about the nature of sounds, in which you will know all these terms, what actually they are, what they mean, and how they play a role in the sense of hearing. So just as light provides us with information about the environment around us, so does sound. So if you were to stop reading for a moment and close your eyes, what would you hear? Probably a host of sounds, traffic passing by on the road outside, and some music you might have put on some time ago, the neighbor's television, the hum of the light, and so on. So our sense of hearing responds to a wide range of sounds, ranging from the very soft to the very loud. And sound is produced by vibrations carried out by the air, water, and other mediums, and travels as wave. So, as sound requires a medium to travel in, it cannot travel in a vacuum, because sound waves move at a fraction of the speed of light, and they produce a successive bunching and spreading of the molecules in the medium, and our auditory or hearing system process the waves to produce different sound waves. So this is what we will be discussing deeply in this video. So we'll start with the topic hearing, sensing sound waves. Because without hearing and vision, there probably would be no spoken or written languages, and without language, most of the cultural and scientific accomplishment of human beings probably would have been impossible. And the sense of hearing depends on the ear, a complex sensory instrument that transduces the physical properties of the sound waves into neural messages that can be sent to the brain. And neural messages from the ear are the first interpreted in the temporal lobe's auditory area and then forwarded to the other parts of the brain for additional interpretation. So, but we have discussed these transmission of the messages from body to the brain in great detail in our chapter of neurons and first lesson of sensation, in which we discussed that how you detect sensory or stimuli, and how it is converted or transduced into a neural impulse. So if you haven't watched that video, you can either ask me in the comment section or you can check the description box for the links. So about sound, what it is or what actually sound is, because the first term which we will be using is audition. um, I have included a very tiny definition of audition, which is the sense of hearing. And you can also include or consider audition as yes, the sense of hearing, because hearing or audition is the sense that detects the vibratory changes in the air known as sound waves. And when an object such as a tuning fork vibrates back and forth, it sets in motions in successive in motion successive waves of compression and rarefaction, which is the expansion of the molecules of the air. And when the waves reaches the ear, the reception of sound begins, which we'll be discussing in great detail. So the sound waves in the air causes a chain of small structure in the air to vibrate in a way that is eventually transduced into a neural message. The next term is basically sound wave. I have included a very short definition here. Sound wave is vibratory changes in the air that carry sound. Sound waves. Not all sound waves are alike. However, the nature of sound wave determines to a great extent how we will sense it. For one thing, sound waves differ in frequency of cycle of compression and rarefaction of the air, and objects that vibrate slowly create low frequency sound waves, whereas rapidly vibrating objects produce high frequency sound waves. And what actually frequency is. So we'll discuss frequency in great detail, and before discussing frequency, we'll discuss hertz. So hertz is the measurement of the frequency of sound waves in cycle per second. As we have discussed that objects that vibrate slowly create low frequency sound waves, whereas rapidly vibrating objects produce high frequency sound waves. So the frequency of sound waves is measured in hertz units. The number of vibratory cycles per second. So the human ear is sensitive to the sound waves in range of 20 to 20,000 hertz, and sound waves also differ in terms of intensity, which is or how dense comparted the air molecules are in the sound waves. And then there is another term which is the loudness. So as I've discussed, like light waves, sound waves also have certain properties. A person's perception of sound is directly related to these properties, and the first thing we notice about a sound is the loudness. And loudness is determined by the dimension of amplitude of the sound waves, which is reflected as the height of wave. And as amplitude increases, loudness is also increased, and or you can say loudness also increases. So the amplitude of a wave is measured in units called decibels, and amplitude is the intensity or amount of energy of a wave reflected in the height of the wave. The amplitude of sound waves determined a sound's loudness. So amplitude is the amount of energy of a wave, which is reflected in the height of the wave, and it determines a sound's loudness. Or there is another definition which I would like to include, that intensity is the density of vibrating air molecules, which determines the loudness of the sound. Then there is another term which is the decibel. Decibel is the unit of measurement of loudness. And then there is another term which is the pitch. It is the relative highness or lowness of a sound determined by the frequency of a sound wave. And again, frequency, which we were discussing a lot, the definition is that the rate of vibration or the number of sound waves per second is the frequency. And the last one is timbre. Timbre is the distinctive quality of a sound determined by the complexity of the sound waves. So what we got here is that our perception of sound is directly related to the physical properties of the sound wave. And one of the first things that we notice about sound is how loud it is, which is the loudness. And loudness is determined by the intensity or amplitude of a sound wave and is measured in its units, which is the decibel. And 0 decibels represent the loudness or of the softness, loudness of the softest sound that human can hear, or the absolute threshold for hearing. As decibels increase, perceived loudness increases. Pitch refers to the relative highness or lowness of a sound, and pitch is determined by the frequency of a sound wave, whereas frequency refers to the rate of vibration or the number of waves per second and is measured in units called hertz. Now, hertz simply refers to the number of wave peaks per second. The faster the vibration, the higher the frequency, the closer together the waves are, and the higher the tone produced. If you pluck the high and the low strings on a guitar, you will notice that the low vibrates far fewer times per second than the higher one. So most of the sound we experience do not consist of single frequency but are complex and consisting of several sound waves frequencies. So this combination of frequencies produces the distinctive quality or timbre of sound, which enables us to distinguish easily between the same note played on a saxophone or a piano. Now, every human voice has its own distinctive timbre, which is why you can immediately identify a friend's voice on a telephone from just a few words, even if you haven't talked to each other for years. So this was all about today's lecture. If your point is clear, your concept is clear, you can like the video. If not, you can ask us in the comment section and we will be happy to help you out. Plus, if you're new to this channel, you want to stay notified, you can subscribe to Dear Knowledge, you can subscribe to our channel, click on the bell icon so you will never ever miss any notification. Plus, you can share the link of the video and channel with your family members and friends because sharing is caring. Until then, Allah Hafiz.